Hello. Oh, it works. I never worn one of these before. Okay, very good. Wait another minute. Usually I'm the one running a few minutes late, so I was pleased today that I was mostly on time. But maybe someone else is. I'm from Ann Arbor, so I was telling folks all day yesterday and today that I was actually kind of glad that Michigan lost so that I didn't have to be the gloating victor today. Thought I might get a little more sympathy if I could be the one who needs pity. So as I mentioned, I'm not from Columbus, but I'm always really happy to be here. And I came down yesterday for the Friendsgiving. And whenever I'm here on a Saturday, I figure I might as well stick around on Sunday and enjoy all the fun things that go on here. But before I say anything else, I thought we should start with a refuge prayer, because otherwise I'm going to forget it. And I need to remember what it is I'm doing here and why I'm doing it personally anyway. So let's just go ahead and recite it 3 times each in English. In the Buddha, the Dharma, in the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain enlightenment for the sake of all beings. And now let's just take a couple minutes to land here. I've been running around all morning, so for myself at least, maybe some of you just did an hour-long meditation, but I need a minute. So let's all just take a big breath. And this morning I'm going to suggest that you could feel into your feet. And you can notice if they are resting on the ground, if you're in a chair, or if you're on the floor. Notice what it feels like to have them tucked under you. Maybe they're a little squished. Notice if they're comfortable or maybe a little chilly. And let's just take a minute or two. So it is really nice to be here. If you don't know me, that would make sense. I come here a few times a year, but I live in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, most of the time. I don't have any ties to the university, I just happen to live there. So I come down here when I can, and my name is Tsekyi, and this is my first time giving the Sunday Dharma talk here at Columbus KTC. So I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not too practiced in public speaking, so I apologize if I talk too fast, if I say a lot. Those things might well happen. I've never given a Dharma talk to this many people in person before. And there's a really good reason for that. The reason is that I don't actually have any credentials to be doing this. I'm not a lama, which is a title that you get here in this tradition when you complete the traditional 3-year retreat, which is something that Lama Kathy and Lama Tom have done. And I haven't even been practicing the Dharma for very long, to be honest. The other folks who give the Dharma talks here sometime are all long-time practitioners. I only found the Dharma at Ann Arbor KTC in 2019, and I took refuge in 2020. So it's starting to be in the past, but it still feels pretty recent to me. So even though I'm new, you might have noticed that I'm wearing a particularly stylish outfit. And I think this is probably what leads people sometimes to think that maybe I have something to say about Dharma. And the jury is out on that, but nevertheless, Lama Kathy kindly asked me to give the talk today, because she knew I was going to be in town. And she threw me a softball. She asked me to speak about my monastic journey. And that explains these fabulous threads, by the way. I'm really fortunate to have had the opportunity to take monastic vows almost 2 years ago now in India, when I ordained as a novice Buddhist nun in the Tibetan tradition. So Lama Kathy basically just asked me to get up here and spend 45 minutes talking about my journey. And if there's one thing that's easy for me to talk at length about, of course, it's myself. My ego is more than happy to take on that assignment. And to have, I wouldn't call you guys captive, but I think you'll mostly be polite enough to not just get up and leave. So you're kind of captive. Happy to listen to me talk. And those were some of the initial thoughts that went through my head when she asked me to speak today. But I do have at least enough mindfulness practice to reflect a little bit when I start thinking like that. And I thought, well, maybe I don't want to just get up here and recite my Buddhist autobiography for 45 minutes. Of course, there's not really any way for me to talk about my journey without talking about myself. But when I started thinking about how I got here, how I got to this position today and some of the more noteworthy events and circumstances that led me here, it became clear to me pretty quickly that the main feeling tone I have about this whole situation, about my whole journey, is one of overwhelming gratitude. And I thought, well, especially since we just had Thanksgiving, I drove 10 hours straight from KTD, our home monastery, to get to that Friendsgiving yesterday. So I've had 2 Thanksgivings now with my Sangha friends. And given the holiday, I thought, well, maybe gratitude would be a good frame for me to just share a few aspects of my journey with you all. So first and foremost, and most obviously to me, is a bone-deep gratitude that I have for the many teachers and friends who have helped me. When I first walked into Ann Arbor KTC in 2019, I had never thought about Buddhism at all. I wasn't looking for any new kind of religious tradition. At that time, I had not been practicing any religion for about 10 years. This was at a time in my life when I was experiencing a lot of suffering. It was my late 20s. I had all kinds of problems about things I wanted to be different than the way that they were. And to help address that, I had started listening to some books on tape about how to meditate. And I found it really helpful, and I thought it would be nice to have an opportunity to practice meditation in person with some other folks. So I noticed in Ann Arbor's little newsletter, paper news events happening, that there was a free meditation session at Ann Arbor KTC every Wednesday, followed by a half-hour talk or discussion. So Back at that time, in 2019, the program was very simple. We would sit in silence for a half hour and meditate, and then we'd read a few verses here from Shantideva's Way of the Bodhisattva and just discuss them. So if you're not familiar with this text, it's one of the most important writings in our tradition about how to act like a bodhisattva, someone who brings about happiness for themselves and others. And it's a very beautifully written and translated book of poetry. So I highly recommend it, and I found it surprisingly accessible and thought-provoking, even back when I didn't know a darn thing about what was going on here. So even though this was happening, we were reading this book, we were meditating, I didn't actually know that any of this was Buddhist for like a long time. I should have. It definitely said so in the website and on the materials, and if I would have asked anybody, they would have told me that. The KTC in Ann Arbor is much smaller than this one. We have about 15 members or so, and at any given event, maybe 7 or 8 people show up. And we meet in a house in a neighborhood. So it doesn't look like this. We certainly don't have anything like this completely amazing shrine that's behind me. But we do have a large sort of china cabinet full of a big statue of the Buddha and other Buddhist statues, and we have some sets of these offering bowls. And the walls are covered with beautiful tankas, these paintings of deities like Green Tara and Shenrezi that indicate the Buddhas and their many qualities and the bodhisattvas. And I'd never seen anything like any of this before. But I was so clueless, I didn't really register any of it. I remember thinking the decor was really interesting, but not really being curious beyond that. So I was just there to meditate, and I was really happy that everybody was so welcoming and kind. And I should say, too, that that's totally fine, by the way, if you just come here, just to meditate. Or even if you just come to enjoy the social time and the excellent snacks and coffee that's down there in the middle. That's one of my favorite parts of coming to Columbus. It's completely fine. You're always welcome to participate in whatever way you want. That's one of the things I've always loved about the KTCs, both in Ann Arbor and in Columbus, is that there's no pressure. We try to offer a lot of different kinds of programs, so different kinds of meditation, different teachings from all different kinds of teachers. Sometimes we have visiting teachers. We have different chanting prayer sessions, the pujas. I've done a couple of them already this morning. And you're welcome to explore any of that if that kind of thing appeals to you. But there's no obligation to do any of that if you don't want, or to believe anything you don't want. So that was a real nice change from some other churches I have been at other points in my life, is you're welcome to take whatever offerings work for you and ignore the rest or explore them at whatever pace you want. For myself, 6 years ago, I was really enjoying the group meditation and just the atmosphere of the shrine room and the whole building. It's smaller, but it's very cozy, peaceful, safe, and comfortable. It really felt like a refuge, which was something I really needed, especially at this particular time in my life. And of course, it's not just the building and the spaces that make the place come alive, but all the people really are what breathe life into it. And we have a wonderful cast of characters over there in Ann Arbor. Many of them are longtime students of Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, just as many of the senior students here are as well. And they've been practicing Dharma for decades. And pretty much universally, they are gentle, kind, and welcoming, I have found, in their own way, in a way that I had never really experienced before. I remember early on, when I had first started attending, one time there was a snowstorm, and I'm very fortunate to only live about a mile away from the center, so I just put on my boots and hiked over. But I hadn't really been thinking, only me and Joe showed up, nobody else did. But since we were there, we decided to still go ahead and meditate, why not? And I was really new, and Joe handed me the bell, and he said, "Go ahead, you can ring it." And I was so excited. It felt like such a big responsibility. And I feel like I rang it too loud again today. There's an art to it. You want to get it just the right volume. But it really made me happy to feel like I was able to just participate, even though I think at this point I still didn't know it was Buddhist. And then there's Tim. Tim is a member who is always there. He shows up for absolutely everything we do. And he arrives a half hour early. He sets up the shrine, he turns on our computer and gets Zoom going. When no one else is willing, he is willing to umse the chanting practice that we do every Sunday. And I will say sometimes that means he is the umse for the entire month. And when no one else is available to give the Dharma talk that we do on Wednesday nights, he is always willing to step up and do it, even though I think public speaking is probably not his favorite thing. He does it because somebody has to. I've never met a more reliable person than Tim. And then when I did eventually take refuge, about a year and a half after I started attending, Pat, who is, she's been a student at Khenpo Rinpoche since the 80s, she sent me an email right away congratulating me and offering to give me a bunch of her Buddhist stuff. So she gave me a little set of offering bowls that are still on my shrine that I still use today. She gave me this beautiful tanka of medicine Buddha and a little consecrated statue of Chenrezig that Khenpo Rinpoche himself had blessed, an incense and a butter lamp, sort of the whole Buddhist starter kit, which ended up being really helpful for me because I still, at this point, didn't, Lama Nancy gave me the brief instructions about how to set up your shrine and take refuge, but I didn't know what any of this stuff was. And Pat was also happy to tell me all kinds of stories about camping at KTD during the 10-day teachings and all the famous teachers who visited the KTC over the years. Lama Nancy is the Lama over in Ann Arbor, and I'm more grateful to her than I will ever be able to express. She's done so much for me, from giving me refuge once I figured out what Buddhism was, to patiently walking me through each stage of the Nundro preliminary practice. Each time I was coming up on one, I would meet with her and she'd just walk through the whole thing with me because I insisted that she tell me exactly what the melody is and what the hand motions are. I was so new to chanting. And she also helped me plan my solo trip to India to take my monastic vows, which would definitely not have been possible without her guidance in helping me figure out where to stay and what planes to take to get there. That was very daunting. But one of the first things that caught my attention about Lama Nancy was the way that she's able to handle unusual situations. And at the KTC, of course, our doors are open to everyone, which is wonderful, but sometimes that means that folks who are a little unwell mentally will attend. And in one instance that comes to mind, a woman that none of us knew came in halfway through the meditation session. And so, as I said, we're basically meeting in a living room. There are like 6 or 7 of us, and this woman comes in and sits down in the middle, and she pulls out a pen and she starts scribbling all over the refuge prayer. Not meditating, clearly not with the program that the rest of us are doing. And Lama Nancy was leading that day, and she didn't blink an eye. She just had us finish out our meditation session, and we all let the quiet hold what was happening. And then she went on, and she gave her Dharma talk, and allowed the woman to be there. And when we got to the discussion session, the woman was invited to share, even though she wasn't really making a whole lot of sense. And once everything was over, Lama got up, and she went and spoke with her and tried to see if there was any way she could help her. And I just remember being amazed at how cool and collected and graceful she was in this situation where I was completely flummoxed. And I've seen her do things like this, and other lamas also do things like this many times since then. So in short, as we were reading through Shantideva and discussing what he says about how to be a bodhisattva, about how to be this person who works for the benefit of others, the folks at the KTC were on the ground demonstrating it for me. Very humbly, very matter-of-factly, just living it. No fanfare, just going about the day-to-day, week-to-week business of running the center. And maybe that doesn't sound particularly sexy, but I had never seen anything quite like this before. And I do need to clarify, don't get me wrong, all the folks in Ann Arbor are imperfect human beings. So love you guys if any of you are watching on YouTube. Everybody there is working through our own hang-ups and our own issues and lifetime's worth of karmic nonsense. And I am absolutely at the top of that list of needing to work through a bunch of karmic nonsense. But they're doing their darndest to walk the walk. And I think a lot of the time, they do that without really thinking about it at all. It's just become so ingrained in their habits and in what they're doing. So I'm eternally grateful to everyone at Ann Arbor KTC for showing me what it means to practice living a Dharmic life and to practice the Dharma in the midst of our imperfect real-world conditions. And wouldn't you know it, when I started to branch out from Ann Arbor KTC, I found this pattern repeated. When the pandemic started, I began attending the many virtual programs that Columbus KTC was offering. And the Introduction to Buddhism classes here finally started to make it click for me what was going on. And fortunately, the more I learned about Buddhism and how to practice and what it is we're doing here, which I'm still learning, the more I knew that this was the right fit for me. Even though I hadn't really known I was looking for anything, it turns out that I was. I remember in those classes, there's a class about how to start a daily practice. And you're simply advised to do two things: to meditate just a little bit every day, 5 minutes before bed, and to contemplate the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma every day. And I still do those 2 things, and I've done them every day since that class 5 years ago. They have laid a really good foundation for all the rest that's come. It takes a lot of people working together to consistently offer a program like that, this class that is offered every week, not to mention all the other programs and offerings that Columbus KTC makes available for free regularly. And as someone who is now involved in running a KTC, I'm the director of the Ann Arbor Center currently. I am just floored by the amount of time and love and effort the volunteers here in Columbus pour into making this place such a loving and vibrant home for this Sangha and this community. And even if you're not officially a volunteer here, but you come here and you bring your enthusiasm and your curiosity and your kindness into this place, you're a part of that too. What's going on here is made from all of us working together. And just like in Ann Arbor, the community here welcomed me immediately as well, without any questions, without any reservations, like I always belonged. The first time I visited this new building in person, I think it was the first Lama visit here. I walked in the door just a little before the program started, and some folks knew me a bit from Zoom, but I hadn't really been coming around before then, so I kind of thought maybe no one would know me. But I came in and I said, "Is there anything I can do to help?" And within an hour of arriving here for the first time, Julaine got me involved, and I found myself serving tea to Khenpo Ujin and to Khenpo Sanjay. After, of course, she explained to me how to do that. I had never met a Khenpo before. I had never attended a teaching by a fancy teacher in robes before, and I didn't know what tea service was. And then again, this experience has repeated itself at KTD, or Karmatrana Dharma Chakra, which is our home monastery in rural New York. The first time I went there, I was so nervous. I had no idea what to expect at a monastery. I went alone. I had arranged to do a personal retreat. So I knew that I would be working on my Nundro practice throughout the day, but I had no idea what the space would be like, what the people there would be like. I didn't know how to behave in a monastery. But right away, when I got there, Lama Karma Drodul, who many of you know, I had first met him here, he had agreed to meet with me and to give me a tour of the place. And he answered my questions, and he made it very clear that it would be okay to do prostrations in the main shrine room, even if other stuff was going on. I thought it might be too noisy, but if there's one thing you should know about KTD, it's that prostrations are always welcome. And after the brief tour, Lama Karma sat me down in the front row of a teaching that was going on about Medicine Buddha. And I found out later that this teaching was only supposed to be offered in Chinese and Tibetan. But as soon as he saw me sit down, Khenpo Sanjay Trinley, who was just here, he didn't really know me, but he looked at me and he quickly and correctly ascertained that woman does not speak Chinese or Tibetan. So he started translating the teaching into English as well, just because he saw me there. One of the great opportunities available if you happen to get up to KTD one day is that they have several chanting practices they do every day. And as part of my retreat on my first visit there, I had committed to attending the daily Green Tara and Chenrezi practices. So every morning at 6 a.m., I found myself in the Tara shrine room, attempting to follow along with the Green Tara practice. I had not done it much at all by that point. If you're not familiar with Green Tara, well, you're welcome to come and join us. We do it here almost every Sunday morning at 8 a.m., so please feel free to come and get familiar with it. But if you're not familiar, it can go pretty quickly, especially at KTD, where a native Tibetan speaker is leading the practice. And there's also a lot of sort of optional things. You can play music at different times in the practice, and there are hand gestures that go with parts of it. So I showed up every day, and I looked around, and I did my best to imitate everybody I saw around me. But it was clear that I was pretty lost and new to this. So after a couple days of attending and attempting, Lama Zopa, who is one of the monks there, he's the Lama at Albany KTC, he kindly took pity on me, and he offered to teach me. He met with me one afternoon, and he showed me how to play the bell and dorje, and how to make the different mudras for the practice. And he walked through the practice with me and sort of what was going on when. And then later in that trip, he also agreed to meet me at the Namse Bangso bookstore at KTD. And I stood there a little bit dumbfounded with my hands out while he went around and collected all these books that I should read to start to get an understanding of what Buddhism is and what our lineage is. And he put this big stack of books in my hands, and he said, okay, read these in a year and come back and I'll give you more. And I did not read all of the books, but I did end up reading most of them, and they were really helpful. So I've talked for a half hour already, and maybe it seems like I haven't actually said very much about becoming a monastic, which is technically what Lama Kathy asked me to speak about, my monastic journey. But this part of the story is at least as important as my flying to India and my getting a new outfit and a new name. This part of the story, this falling in love with this living and lived Dharma, this falling in love with this lineage and with the many, many dozens of imperfect people who help make it go, has been the fertile ground from which my practice, my commitment, and my understanding, what little of it I have, has been nurtured. And I hesitated to give any names in this talk because, of course, for every person I name, there are at least 10 more that I haven't mentioned, and 100 more, usually small, unspoken acts of kindness that I carry with me and that really fuel my coming back to the cushion, that inspire me to help plan another Lama visit in Ann Arbor, even though, boy, it's a lot of work, and that bring me back again and again to my bodhisattva motivation, to this remembrance that we are all in this together, and that this is something worth dedicating a life to. So that's the usually unspoken backdrop of why I wanted to become a nun. A huge part of it was my wanting to serve and participate in this community and in this lineage that has given so much to me. So for me, given my particular circumstances and my karma and my aspirations, becoming a monastic made sense. And I've been delighted to see that it's really allowed me to work even more fully in that way. But the good news is, you don't have to do that. You don't have to take vows. You don't have to commit to lifelong celibacy or sobriety to also be able to experience gratitude and love and to want to participate in this community. I'm super grateful to have had the chance to take my nun vows. But sometimes they do kind of seem like a fancy distraction to me from the actual point of the thing. Because of course you can make a commitment, right? You can make a commitment to your practice, you can make a commitment to working towards being a force for good in this world, whether or not you're a monk or a nun, or whether you've taken any formal vows. In Ornament of Precious Liberation, formerly called Jewel Ornament, maybe you will know it by that name. This is one of the seminal texts in our lineage, and this very book is one that Lama Zopa put in my hands that day. It's very readable, I find, for having been written over 800 years ago. It's pretty workable. And in it, there's a chapter on loving kindness and compassion. And Gampopa, the author of the text, says, "The way to cultivate loving kindness is as follows. Since gratitude is the root of love, bring to mind the kindness of sentient beings." So let's just reflect on that for a moment. The way to cultivate loving kindness is as follows. Since gratitude is the root of love, bring to mind the kindness of sentient beings. Well, it's not rocket science. I think most of us intuitively sense the truth of that. But when I was reading the chapter recently, it hit me what a simple but profound truth it is. So as you can see, we start with gratitude, and I hope it's easy for you to connect to some feeling of gratitude, to something to be grateful for. But I know it isn't always easy, for me anyway. So I thought for the latter part of this talk, I could share a quick practice that I sometimes use to help me shift into a grateful mindset. I'm currently participating in a group. It's a 3-year program where we meet once a month, and the program is called Grateful Living. It was developed by Brother David Steindl Rast, and he's a Catholic monk and author. He's currently 99 years old. He's alive still. I think he's in Austria. And he's largely known for his work emphasizing the importance of gratitude for living a happy life. He's also been engaged in a lot of interfaith dialogue throughout his life, especially Buddhist-Christian dialogue, which doesn't surprise me at all, having been learning about and practicing some of his teachings. It really gels with Dharma. And he has one main practice for this Grateful Living program called Stop, Look, Go. There's a great TED Talk on this if you want to see him himself explain it. And this is the practice I want to teach. And maybe if it works for you, you could take it home and give it a whirl. It's pretty easy to remember. Just stop, look, go. So the first thing, we stop. Sounds easy, but I think we all know that in America here, stopping isn't always the easiest thing to do. We love doing, especially right now that we're just getting into the holiday season. There's so much to be done. It's often easy just to go, go, go. But stop is an invitation to just intentionally stop the doing for just a moment. It's an invitation to get quiet and to let our bodies and our minds settle. If that sounds like meditation to you, yep, that's the right idea. If we want to see what else reality might be able to hold other than our incessant stream of consciousness, we need to take a deliberate moment to stop and look. That can look like a formal meditation session, but it doesn't have to. It can just be taking one deliberate breath when you're in line at the grocery store or after you get into your car on the way home from work. It's about having the intention to take a moment. Now, once you've stopped, look. You've dropped your story. So now you can open all your senses and look and see what's around you. Open your eyes and notice the colors and the shapes of things. Open your ears. Maybe there was a background noise you hadn't noticed before. Tap in internally. See what you're feeling. Check in with yourself. Maybe you'll be surprised. You can feel into your feet. Just take a moment to notice what it is like to be alive in this body, in this place, right now. This present awareness in this moment is a gift. You haven't earned this moment. You haven't brought your awareness in this moment about in any way. It's just here. And you have no way to know if you will be alive in the next moments to come. But right now, in this moment, put your attention on your chest for a moment. Maybe you can feel your heart beating. Isn't that amazing? This muscle has evolved to pump blood and nutrients throughout our bodies without stopping every moment of our lives. Right now, in this moment, you're safe. You're in a warm room. And if you stuck around during the break, you're probably also full and well caffeinated. Then once you've taken this moment, once you've noticed what's around you, what it's like to be you, then go. Act. Start all that doing again. This isn't a practice that we do to hide from the world, but to teach ourselves to live more consciously and more gratefully within it. When you go forth, you do so now with a new awareness and a new appreciation of what it is you're working with here. You exist right now. What is that about? What a grand mystery we get to spend our lives exploring. And whatever it is, what are we going to do with it? You get to make that decision too. Practicing seeing things from this point of view isn't just about putting on rose-colored glasses and pretending like you're grateful for this list of things that you're supposed to be grateful for. If things are shitty right now and you're having a hard time, that's totally okay. You can stop, look, and notice that. For me, this practice welcomes that kind of experience. It allows your experience, any kind of experience, whatever it is, to be exactly the way it is. It doesn't ask you to deny anything. But while acknowledging and working to be with our experience, however it's showing up, good or bad or bored, anything at all, it asks us to recognize that and then to have the courage to step back and get a broader angle on the situation as well. Get a bigger point of view, a point of view that can hold whatever is going on, both the pain and the wonder at the same time. I will say that Brother David makes the assumption that if you stop and look, you will find something to be grateful for. And I wager that most of the time you do this, you're going to be able to pretty easily find something external to be grateful for. Maybe you'll notice the song of a bird out your window, or the softness of a blanket in your lap. But this practice is about more than gratitude for these external blessings in our lives. It's about appreciation for this precious human life itself, no matter what it looks like right now. So I'm almost done here, and I want to read a short quote from Brother David, really laying this out, his theory of gratitude. And it's from an interview on his website, which is grateful.org, if you want to check it out. So he explains. People usually think that gratitude is saying thank you, as if this were the most important aspect of it. The most important aspect of the practice of gratitude is trust in life. Every human being, every day, has to make a practical choice between trusting life or not trusting life. Again and again in life, one is tempted to distrust and fear. Fear and distrust, this is the same. If you try out distrusting life and always questioning life, you find that it makes you absolutely miserable. Or you can try trusting life and whatever comes up, saying, well, maybe I don't like it, but I trust that life gives me good things, that life is trustworthy. And to live that way is what I call grateful living, because then you receive every moment as a gift. And really, the gift within the gift is opportunity. This is when you stop long enough to ask yourself, what is the opportunity in this moment? You look for it, and then you take advantage of that opportunity. It's as simple as that. So this is me speaking again. So my journey has brought me here today, to this lineage, to these robes, and to this seat even, because of what Gampopa said in the Ornament of Precious Liberation. Because I am grateful. Because I am grateful for the people and for the circumstances, and certainly grateful for the truth of the Dharma. And being grateful, letting myself sit in that gratitude and really feel it, the only possible response that occurs to me is to love in turn. And for me, that looks like this, to be a nun, but that is not the only way to live a life of love. So I wish each of you the ability to stop and look and go, and to take the time to appreciate the million little things that are always singing with joy and wonder and peace in the world. And let them move you, and go forth in the love. So this is where I get to invite you to respond. If you have a question, I'd be happy to try and answer. There are a couple microphones, or any comments or stories you might want to share, or any complaints. I'll hear those too. And I know I didn't actually talk a whole lot about being a nun, but feel free to go off topic if you have a question that's off topic.
Thank you very, very much. I'm moved.
Good to see you, David.
I wanted to say thank you too. I think I really can't think of any good questions at this point, but I really do appreciate your story. So it was very moving.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good morning, or afternoon, I guess. Interestingly, we talked a little bit downstairs in the community room, and after you left, I thought, I really wanted to know a little bit about the KTC in Ann Arbor. And so
Well, perfect.
it was.
Yeah.
The thing that, there's a whole lot of things that you said this morning that I feel like I've gained from. But the one that resonates with me is that item of trust, and just how fascinating life is when one just doesn't have the fear, doesn't have the apprehension about the unknown. Yeah. And it's just what pops up as a result of being trusting of it. So thanks for that insight.
Yeah. I know it can be, sometimes I worry that it seems like distrust and fear is merited, and I worry if I'm not distrustful and fearful, then how will anything get done? It sort of seems like you have to be to fight something that's going wrong, or that you feel isn't happening the way it should be. But it's sort of like Brother David was saying, when I've tried to go that way, when I try to fight whatever is happening, it doesn't work out. I once heard a teacher say, well, how is that working out for you? And somehow, by starting from this base of just allowing everything to be, even if it isn't very good right now, even if a lot of things aren't the way I would really ideally like them to be, if I were king of the universe and setting them up, it gives me a realistic place to start working with what's actually happening and to try and make changes from there. And being miserable about it just doesn't help anything. It never helps me be able to bring about change.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for your bravery in giving a talk today and overcoming your fear and trepidation. My question is kind of practical. I'm curious, I'm sort of ignorant about what it actually means to take novice monastic vows. If you could talk about what that actually means in terms of the vows you took, and also what it means to take those vows and not live in a monastery or monastic setting?
Those are good questions. And those are also questions I had when I thought I wanted to be a nun. In America, it's all kind of new. I'm really the second generation of Tibetan Buddhist Dharma practitioners in America. So we're still very much learning what that looks like. So in answer to the first question, so the vows they're the same vows you can take also as a lay practitioner, which are don't kill people. I hope we're all keeping that one. No stealing, especially anything of value. Don't lie, especially about your Dharma spiritual achievements. No consuming intoxicants. And then the other one is no sexual misconduct. So just behaving responsibly, anyone can take that vow. And if you're a monastic, then you agree to celibacy. So that's the one difference. Those are the main vows. There are others you take as a novice monastic. I will be honest, I took them and the whole ceremony was in Tibetan, and there does not seem to be agreement on exactly what those vows are and how we keep them. So it's been a learning journey. I talked to a lot of monks and nuns about what does this actually look like when I'm trying to live it. And we all keep those 5, those are important. And then the other ones, it's a lot of, they're kind of things that maybe made sense in India 2,500 years ago, like you don't sit on a seat higher than a meter high. But like, well, in America, that's how, chairs are as tall as they are. Like, what do I do? So a lot of it is sort of using your common sense and thinking about the meaning behind what the vows were. Like you don't want to be too prideful, of course, is sort of the idea behind that one. In terms of, we do have a monastery, a KTD, and there are monks and nuns who live there. When I first took my vows, I asked Lama Lodro, the head nun and the president over there, should I move here now? And she said, well, actually, it's more helpful if you're able to stay in the Midwest and help out the KTCs. Because, we all know that the KTCs, the more help, the better that we get. So that was fine with me. As I spoke about today, I'm here because of the KTCs. So that's what I'm ending up doing. But I think for each person, especially for each American, what it looks like is going to be different. And I think it's actually a really exciting time to be a monastic in America and in the West because we're kind of discovering what that means and what that looks like. I personally, traditionally, of course, in Asia, monastics pretty much live at the monastery as far as I can tell and stay within the community. And that's sort of the original vision. But I think that there's a lot of room for there to be sort of a more engaged with the secular world kind of monasticism in America especially, where there isn't a monastery out here in the Midwest for me to be a part of. Like, this is my community, is all of these lay people who I love and who I'm grateful for. So, I need to figure out what it means to be a part of this and to interact in this way. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, grateful for sharing your experience, strength and hope, I suppose, in a way. Yes, so this is my first question is sort of on a practical level. Like, what exactly do folks do when they're on retreat? I mean, so is there a lot? I mean, I guess the basic question, and ipso facto, is there a lot of memorization?
There can be. You can choose, actually.
I mean, we're readers too, Buddhists. We tend to be readers, but
yes. This is one of the nice things about the Dharma that I've discovered is we have I mentioned a number of the different kinds of offerings that the centers have, meditation, chanting, teachings. In our personal practice, it's like that too. There's all different kinds of things we can do to help our practice grow. And there's different times when reading and study make more sense. Like when I was new, I really needed to read a bunch of those books that Lama Zopa gave me. I will admit I'm reading much less these days, and I'm doing more
I
practice.
think we all are, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. So it kind of, it's something that's going to be evolving for you, where you should be putting your attention. I do love to memorize, actually. I find it really helpful, because then I can kind of bring the prayers and the poetry around with me, like when I'm driving I can recite or something. But memorization is definitely not for everybody. So if you think like, I don't want to go back to, 6th grade and have to memorize things, you don't have to.
Okay. It's not as regimented, I suppose. Like the Rinzai order in Japan. Like if you don't having, you're sitting there meditating on, or if you don't have something completely recited, someone's not going to hit you upside the head with a cane stick.
No. When I realized this was Buddhist, I kept expecting people to be like, sit straighter, do this, do that,
very,
like wake up. But nobody here, everybody's so nice.
There's probably other flavors. Well, there are.
There are.
There's more militaristic flavors of Buddhism for sure. But I was just curious about that. What was the other one I was going to ask? Oh, yes. Fear and trust with life. I guess, what comes to mind is I know for me, I have like an inner Dostoevsky, so, what that results in is like a very deep-seated cynicism and sardonic perspective on life sometimes, for sure. And it's interesting to hear it broken down from that perspective of like, well, maybe that's just about fear, and maybe that's just about not having trust in life. It's because like I definitely don't trust life a lot of times. Or if I do, I trust it, but I trust it to be really, really crappy. Like lower expectations, kind of like that song from, that bit from Mad Life, right? So, I guess I just don't, I don't expect things to be great, I just don't. And maybe that's a form of fear, but like, it's just, I don't like, setting myself up for disappointment. Maybe that's a protection from that fear and that lack of trust. I mean, is there anything you can speak to that about?
Yeah, you brought up a lot of really good and I think relatable points. I kind of do this too, actually. I always expect worst case scenario. That's sort of my default. And I do that, I think, to protect myself from, and thinking I'm going to get this thing and then having the letdown. I think, for me, the best way, well, first of all, if that's where you're starting and if that's where you're at, in which I, too, also, it's easier to sort of, like I said, imagine worst case scenario or maybe be cynical about things. Like, that's okay. If that's where you find yourself right now, if that's how your mind is, it's good to notice that that's what you're doing. And then you don't even have to try to change it necessarily. Just notice. Like, okay, I'm thinking that this isn't going to work out. I'm thinking, that this person is intentionally being rude, whatever it is. And just often the noticing itself is really like the first step to change starting to happen. But you don't even have to. Don't even have to try to change. Just be aware of what your mind is doing. It's not necessarily a good thing either to, I think this trust in life thing is a really interesting question, because you don't want to assume you're going to always get exactly what you want and that the best case scenario is going to be happening either, because you're going to be disappointed if that's what you expect.
Voltaire's Candide.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's more just about trying to be open to what is happening and not necessarily having to have a judgment about it, not necessarily having to have a preference. So whatever is happening, good or bad, maybe that person was being a jerk to you, do I have to, it's about how I respond to what is happening. So maybe this isn't great, but what, I can think about it from a different perspective, right? Like, what are they going through, maybe?
Sure.
How is it like to be them?
Well, just because I'm in a place of Notes from the Underground doesn't mean I have to treat other people like they're I don't have
Yeah.
to. Cynicism is for me, not necessarily for everybody else, and I don't have to dump or project that onto other people. I try not to.
Yeah.
But internally, like it's hard to come from a place of trust when you're already hurting really bad.
Yeah.
And if you've been carrying a lot of hurt for a long time, the last thing you want to do is bring on more hurt. And I think that's like why I struggle with hope and why I struggle with just having a positive outlook on the future in general, truthfully. So my only way I can process that is I just can't look ahead. I just have to. I got like a 48-hour window, and that's about it.
Yeah. It's not inherently a bad thing, I don't think. I think actually that living in the moment that part is okay, but the part where you're doing it because you're afraid of the future is maybe the part that would be curious to explore.
Yeah.
One thing, this is maybe not easy to do. This might take a little bit of meditation experience and some practice, but I was touched when I was reading this quote, when I read this quote for the first time from Brother David, where he sort of talks about it like a science experiment. It's like, well, live your life in the way that you want to. Maybe you're afraid, maybe you're distrustful, and just notice. Notice how that makes you feel. Notice how that makes other people feel around you. And just for an experiment, maybe for one day, just try noticing and shifting it. Even if you don't really believe it, just play around with, if you give yourself different ideas, sort of like, if you notice yourself telling yourself a story, maybe stop it, drop the story. And it's not necessarily about even replacing it with another story, but you could try replacing it. Like that's sort of what the Bodhisattva idea is we're replacing this one story with a story about how.
It's interesting that you said that, because I had somebody else recently tell me, you could just change the story, Charlie.
It's sort of horrifying
you can do
when
that?
you realize how
Really?
much control
is
you
that
have.
possible that there could be, I can tell myself a different story?
It's amazing. The more you work with this, the more I think you will be surprised by what agency you have in running your own life.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, and I don't know. I guess it's a journey for all of us to see what exactly unfolds.
Sure. Well, thank you for responding and answering
Yeah.
the questions.
Good luck.
Cheers.
Have fun
absolutely.
exploring.
Well, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe if I change, I'll get a different literary novel in my head.
Yeah. Don?
Yes, we have a question from a YouTube viewer who asks, what does it mean to take refuge?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So refuge it's often called the first formal step on the Buddhist path. It's basically where you decide that, okay, I sort of like what's going on here, I like what the Buddha taught, and I think that that's the way I want to live my life. And usually I think most of us, when we take refuge, we don't necessarily have a very good understanding of what all that means. But from what we've learned up to that point, if we're convinced that this is where I want to put my attention and my energy, then you can take refuge. And you're taking refuge in three things. The Buddha, so the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the Buddha represents, so he's the historical person who attained enlightenment, but we all have that same potential for enlightenment in ourselves. So when we take refuge in the Buddha, we're acknowledging that we too can actually do this. And then in the Dharma, that's the teachings of the Buddha, so that's the path that we walk to move towards that direction. And the Sangha is the community of fellow practitioners who are going to help us on that journey and help teach us and help us when we get confused. So taking refuge it's a formal ceremony where you sort of state your intention to do that. And a lama can help you take refuge if you're interested.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Do we say a dedication prayer here? Okay. Let's go ahead and on the other side of the refuge, let's go ahead and read this dedication of merit just once through in English. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thank you so much, everyone.